Hello, hello. It's Ryan Lipsey with Tycor Title. How we doing? And we are bringing a class to you on how to read a prelim. I have this awesome handy dandy handbook in front of me. We're going to break down the parts of a preliminary title report today. We're going to go over what Schedule A and B are and what are the Western region exceptions are and talk a little bit about titles. So strap in. It's your sales guy, Ryan Lipsey, going over the nuts and bolts and getting granular with what title is, what title does, and how we can serve you at the highest level. So as it pertains to mindset, it's really, learning is earning. You see it everywhere. Readers are leaders, all these different kind of talking points and headlines that you hear. And I would say that the education is king in the sense that you approach a scenario when you know how to break down a prelim, or you know the exact flow of how escrow and funding and lending works. When you have just a little bit of knowledge, it gives you the confidence to step in the situation and know who to direct what orders to, who to delegate what to, and who you can count on for what. So when it comes to how does a prelim and how does understanding how to read a preliminary title report result in a stronger, more positive mindset, is because you know and you have terra firma, a firm foundation of a knowledge base to stand on in a situation of conflict or a situation of questioning or concern, or just knowing basically how to read a prelim. It's a super solid information to have. And this is the basics brought to you by yours truly. My partner in crime will be back next week, so we'll be doing a training together, and we're super pumped to do more and more education with you guys. Very, very grateful for the opportunity to be here. So a preliminary title report, it's that thing you order when you have a listing with us. We do them ahead of time for our folks. Once you ink a listing, we'll run the prelim for you, just so we can get out in front of any of the issues that are going to come up that the prelim tells us are basically obstacles we need to overcome in the process of achieving clear title for the incoming buyer. So for those of you that are predominantly buyer's agents, you've seen them, you should be familiar with them. A great escrow officer like Sarah and those people at Open Escrow will go over them for you, and they'll say, hey, item 7, we got to get it in front of that. That's a child support lien. We got to get in touch with the court and get that ball rolling because they can take forever, et cetera, right? So when you get your preliminary title report, I know many of them, including some of our sister brands at Fidelity family of companies. At Tycor, it's pretty straightforward. It labels it as Schedule A, which is the legal investing portion. Schedule B, which is your first deeds of trust, your seconds, your HELOCs, your solar, your mechanics lien, your encumbrances, your encroachments, etc. And it lays it out pretty clean and pretty easy and readily understandable. Some of them aren't that well laid out, so it gets a little confusing. We welcome you. If you use us when you're able to, we always take a different company's prelim and we'll let you know any red flags. So this course, this little talk today is not about substituting our ability to review your prelim for you. We do that when you open with us. My Katie on my team, she scans every prelim that we do and she sends it out to the agents and says, hey, no red flags, or hey, we've got some red flags, or whatever. So this doesn't substitute that, but it's to give you a working knowledge of what it is that's going on this report and what is this report trying to tell me. First thing to understand is the legal investing, the Schedule A portion of any prelim. Schedule A dictates and deals with vesting and legal. So title insurance does not cover the borders on a plat map, doesn't cover property lines, it doesn't cover the faucets or the roof or the solar or anything like that. It just covers the title to the land as described by the legal description. So a legal description is like, the 45 feet northwest of Banana Street as pertaining to the southwest corner of, and it's just this legal kind of jargony type description. That's the legal description. That's what, if it were to go to court, that's what exactly the owner has claim to through title insurance. So that's why a lot of people have questions about property lines and, hey, tell me how far down the canyon does my property line go? Or if you're on a stream, how far into the stream with riparian rights and all that. Yes, I dropped riparian rights. I love that. How far into the stream does our property line go, right? It's like, so none of that really pertains because we don't deal with property lines. We deal with the legal description of the property. We help with that. We can send an inspector out and say, hey, there's, the westerly line and et cetera, but A surveyor can tell you definitely where the property lines are. So that's one myth that I wanted to debunk for you, is that property lines aren't a function of title insurance, which is a common misconception. Instead of insuring property lines, we insure the legal description, which is more of a concept, more of an idea put out into words by some attorney somewhere. Legal description, right? So legal investing. Vesting is how current ownership on the title. So if it's 123 LLC or a limited partnership or some kind of an S corp or just Ryan Lipsey individual, Ryan and Kelly Lipsey married couple, vesting is who owns the property. So the first thing, a lot of escrow officers, they'll get a new order, they'll open the prelim, and then they'll want the legal investing or the L&B in the same day, because they want to ensure that they wrote the contract for the right sellers. That if it's held in a trust, we know that we're going to need a copy of that trust and know who the successor's trustee is, and get a certificate of trust. And there's just a bunch of things that the vesting will trigger. In a refinance, it's very, very common just to see who the vesting is held, how it's held, because a lot of lenders won't do a refi inside of a trust. They want the individual on the loan documents to be the individual that appears on the grant deed. So that's what vesting is, exactly that. Who appears and how they appear on the grant deed. So you can take title as a sole and separate entity, even if you're inside a marriage, that you can still hold that property as your own, so long as your significant other or your spouse or partner signs off on an interspousal grant deed that relinquishes their 50% interest in the property, because in California, it's a community state. So when you tie the knot, you give them 50% of your property unless you state otherwise in how you hold the property. So the first part you'll see when you get a preliminary title report is maybe a cover page that identifies the address, the escrow company, who the players are on the transaction, maybe some fluff like that. And then the next major meat of the report will be Schedule A, which is legal investing. And then Schedule B gets you into the fun stuff, right? Schedule B is just another way of saying the problems and exceptions that the title insurance company won't insure. Therefore, they're going to need to be rectified or satisfied or paid off or what have you in the process of escrow. So the very, very common ones are like a first deed of trust. Most properties, probably 9 out of 10, have some leverage debt on them in the form of a mortgage. First deed of trust is, when you get your purchase money loan and you're buying for $750 and you get a loan for $600, that loan is going to show off unless you paid it off before you're selling. You're going to have to satisfy that debt through the escrow and through the incoming buyer to pay off that first. So we're going to show that first deed of trust is something that needs to be satisfied prior to insuring and transferring title to the incoming buyer and them having clear title. Super obvious, just easy one, and easy and usually anticipated well ahead of time that they're going to have to pay off the people they owe, right? So some sneakier ones are like a home equity line of credit or a HELOC. Those are when you have 500, 100, whatever level of equity, and then you basically leverage that debt as a checking account or savings account that you can access that equity and write checks against it as a home equity line of credit. There are purchase money seconds, but they're called seconds because they're second in position to be paid off behind the first, right? That's why it's a first deed of trust. The lender won't do a purchase money loan unless they're in first position. Then some based on the loan or the LTV, they're comfortable giving you 200 grand, 250 grand, 300,000 in the form of a home equity line of credit. So it's just there in case you need it, or if you want to do some remodeling, etc. A purchase money second is one where they structure it with a first and then a second behind it, so that you can be in certain metrics in servicing the debt or the debt to income, not the PTI, the LTV. Sometimes a first needs to be with a certain LTV, and then they can get creative and put a second on there. Number of reasons to have a purchase money second, but that would be also in second position. Then you have things like, an income tax lien, so state and federal income tax. So you didn't pay taxes, they throw a lien on the property for $100, for $100,000, whatever it is. Those are things that anything with like the IRS attached to it, you're going to have to satisfy that, whether it's property taxes, income taxes, transfer taxes, they're going to get theirs. So we will certainly identify, shine a big bright light on any tax encumbrances, any clouds on title that involve taxes are among the first to be noted after the mortgages. Then some real fun ones, like we've had, like a child support lien, and Haley tells the story way better than me because she was on the title desk and actually serviced a lot of the incoming calls and whatnot. And there was this guy that there was like $40,000 child support lien, and that he was with a new life partner and they didn't know. And so he denied it. And then push come to shove, they identified that his Social Security number matched the Social Security number on the child support lien. So he indeed had not paid child support liens, and with penalties and everything, it had accrued to $40,000. So he had some explaining to do. And we were able to do that. We're able to, on the flip side is true also. There's people who said, hey man, I don't even have kids. Why do I have child support liens? Well, somewhere along the way, somebody transposed a number on a social or on an address or on an APN, and somebody's child support lien ended up on somebody else's property. It's very, very common. It's a human game, so there's error involved down at the county recorders and that type of thing. So these mistakes happen, and it's pretty easy. It's very easily resolved. Usually, just get the statement of information, which is the SI, commonly referred to as the SI, and that gives a Social Security number and like 5 past addresses of where they've lived, and allows us to eliminate the liens and the clouds that don't involve our actual seller. So we do that every day here at Tycor. Then the tricky ones are where you have physical encroachments. We had up here in Meadows Del Mar, we had a lot that had been sitting there, and this guy owned this lot, never developed it. And he went, and finally he got to a position in life where he wanted to be, and decided he was going to build his forever home on this lot on beautiful Meadows Del Mar, and sent out the team and the surveyor and the builder crew came back and said, hey, there's this part of the lot that has this amazing, huge, retaining wall with a flower bed, and it's on your property, but it's part of your landscaping of your neighbor. And so that was like the kind of a big problem, because he wanted to build right up to the setbacks of his property line, and the flower bed came like full on into his property. So they had to undo that kind of, anchored down wall, and it was like almost 6 figures to remove what they had put in, because somebody didn't say, hey dude, you're going into your neighbor's lot line. And that's, unfortunately, when they catch that, that's something that needs to be resolved, and it's on them. So we have resolved issues like that. Some of the other ones were like the child support lien, but solar's a big one, especially in this climate, with solar being such a profitable enterprise and resource really for the homeowner too, is the way they structure them are one of 2 ways. You see finance statements, which is basically a loan. They came in, put $50,000 worth of panels and equipment into the house, and they had some finance company finance the solar project. It goes as a lien against the house. Most of those loans are not assumable, so the homeowner is going to have to rectify that and pay it off through the proceeds or some way, somehow, because it's not able to have the incoming buyer just assume that loan. So that's one form that the solar will take, and it's a hard line. They got to be paid off. The other one is called a contract. So that's where they have a contract that runs with the property and can easily be transferred to the next owner. They just take over the payments and do what's called an incoming buyer contract. And they just basically substitute the one guy out and the new guy in, and they take over payments. That's a lot easier to resolve. It's unfortunate when a seller has to, maybe they didn't account for paying off $25,000 remaining on a financed solar system, and that's coming out of proceeds, and that might be the make or break moment. And unfortunately, we've had to deal with a lot of those. So those 2 distinctions, know what you're getting into. Talk to us. We can tell you what form it takes when it's a solar that's showing up on your prelim. Check around when you take a listing to see if there's solar. Ask if there's solar. One tip that you can, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? So if you have that going in, there's going to be issues, and maybe it's held in a trust, and maybe the person that formed the trust is no longer with us, and we're going to need some information about that. We have to demonstrate clear chain of title. So if there's, somebody that formed the trust that bequeathed the property to their heirs via the trust, but that person's no longer with us, a lot of times an attorney letter that corroborates the instructions on the trust will help us or will resolve a lot of issues. We dealt with one of those recently. A copy of the trust is more than sufficient 9 out of 10 times, because the trust is exactly that. It's a playbook of what we do who remain on this earth after the person passes, right? So avoiding probate is critical. Trusts are an amazingly valuable thing to do for you and your family and for your loved ones you leave behind, on what the heck to do with your assets. So go get a trust. It's super reasonable. But they can cause problems because if they don't do it right, or if the transfers somehow outside of a transaction, then we have to have an affidavit of uninsured deed, which is another big thing that escrow officers will tell you we run into all the time. So they acquire the property as a married couple, and then they deed out of it to just the individual for like a refinance, and they forget to deed it back into the trust or back into a married couple, and all these quick claims and stuff happened outside of transactions. So then they go to sell it, and it breaks a clear chain of title, right? Because it went from this guy to that guy to this guy and zigzag. So we need to shore up all those transfers and make sure that each party understood what was going on. That way we maintain the integrity of the transfers and all parties knowing what was happening with the vesting. So we have to go back, and if Tom and Jerry own the property and all of a sudden we sell it and only Jerry is on the listing, we need to know what happened to Tom. Well, he quick claimed to Jerry, but it wasn't in a refinance or in a purchase escrow scenario. So we need, Tom signed off to Jerry. So we need Tom to fill out an affidavit that he understands that he did sign off, the reasons why, and that he gave up his interest in the property. That's what the affidavit achieves. And it's annoying because, excuse me, a lot of times it happens with ex-husbands, ex-wives, ex-partners, ex-business partners. And so going back to that party and saying, hey, I need you to sign this affidavit can be cumbersome at best, right? I mean, sometimes there's just like people haven't talked in 5 years and you're going back trying to get this form, and people try to leverage people. Like, well, I'll sign it if, right? And so mind your P's and Q's. Come to me if you have a deed transfer that you need to do outside of a transaction. There's a couple ways you can avoid that situation. You can get the affidavit form signed at the time you get the quitclaim signed, or you can go back to, if Tycor insured the property previously, we can issue an endorsement that allows for that transfer to be insured. So no longer is it an uninsured deed, it becomes an insured deed, so that you wouldn't require the affidavit in the future. So we have solutions for that because we can avoid a very unpleasant situation. I had one of our customers had a seller that had to chase down an ex-wife who had like disappeared to the Philippines. Like nobody knew where they were. And we couldn't do anything until we had to reinstate the clear chain of title. So we had to have them to sign off and say, yeah, I understood that I signed my interest off on this property. A lot of times in a divorce, which is obviously one of the most unpleasant cases, if you can present a divorce decree that demonstrates that the party that can't find the ex or whatever was issued and rewarded the property through the divorce decree, then that is a way around that we can resolve. But like, again, an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. Definitely try to go and get the affidavit ahead of time or do an endorsement on the policy. It's just an endorsement is just a change to the policy that allows for the transfer. So those are some of the main ones. I hope that you'll comment or call us or reach out to us, direct message, any questions. We just really wanted to go over, and Molly's been telling me, hey, how the heck do you read one of these prelims? Couple things about that. Yes, prelim, Schedule A. It's going to give you the legal description of the property, the vesting, who the owner is, and then how they hold it. Do they hold it in an LLC? Do they hold it in a trust? Do they hold it as an individual, et cetera, et cetera. If you have any questions about that, we have a little info sheet on the various methods of holding title, or the most common vestings is like community property, joint tenancy, S corp, trust, LLC, you name it. We have a whole chart for you we can send you, and just it's really nice as a reference point. I'm happy to go over that with you when you get a listing, when we go over the prelim. That's what we do all day long here at Tycor. And then the Schedule B is going to be anything. It's basically, the way to looking at it is anything that you're going to have to fix before closing. So, because the incoming buyer has to have a spotless title. They can't come in and then 6 months down the road, it's like, hey, I'm the guy that put the deck on the second story and I never got paid 30 grand to do it. So where's my 30 grand? And you're like, whoa, that's a mechanic's lien gone awry. That title would never let that survive title. We wouldn't close the deal with that 30 grand still being outstanding. But you've had, 1% of 1% of the time, something like that slips through, or people, like I said, it's a human industry, so it's subject to error. People miss stuff, and you'd be surprised where the new owner is the brand, proud new owner of a lien instead of a new home. And so we avoid that at all costs. That's the whole point of your escrow officer and your title officer being so busy. It's because they're calling and talking and emailing and texting each other and maybe faxing each other about resolving issues just like this gnarly, where they have to unwind this horrific history of people that a lot of times are unattainable, or mortgage companies that have gone out of business. What happens with like Washington Mutual, that they didn't issue a reconveyance of a home equity line of credit that we need to clear off the prelim. What do you do? Well, those are some of the type of issues that we deal with in title, is institutions that are no longer available for comment because they're out of business. So we have to find ingenious ways and creative ways to get around that, to again preserve the clear chain of title and then preserve an incoming pristine title for the new homeowner. That's really the goal. So people ask me, what do? You do tile, like you lay tile and do the grout and stuff? It's like, no, I don't do tile, I do title. And we just basically protect the integrity of the title insurance chain for a new homeowner or for a lender. So in the case of a purchase, the seller says, hey, Mr. Buyer, here's clean title. And the buyer usually has a mortgage. They say, hey, Mr. Lender, here's clean title. Everybody's happy, got clean title. And then Tycor says, we stamp our approval. If something should come up that we missed, we're on the hook for it. The seller's not on the hook, the lender's not on the hook, the new buyer's not on the hook, the title company's on the hook. So it's a non-recurring insurance product that you pay for once, you pay for through escrow. And so trust me, it's worth the good sleep you'll get at night knowing that a title company is on the hook, not you, for any past sins or grievances or skeletons in the closet of that particular property. So that's, your sales guy's point of view on title. We do a lot. The four of us have been doing title for quite some time. I've been doing it 20 years, and behind me is Candy Church and Cindy Youngers and Karen and Marina on their title unit, and Zona Weekly and her commercial title unit, and dozens of other professionals that have been doing it 20 plus, 30 plus years here at Tycor. So I mean, I know I'm pretty good, but I got way better behind me when it comes to studying the nuts and bolts and the nitty gritty fine print, as they say, on a title report to really elucidate and shine a big bright light on what the issues are going to be. And then we can get into solution on solving those. So we're really, really excited and very, very grateful for the opportunity to be with Big Block and with you on this journey. And now you know enough to be dangerous, maybe enough to spark more questions. So comment, call, text. I'm here ready to field your phone calls on how the heck to read a prelim. But we also have this handy dandy book I'm happy to send you, How to Read a Prelim. And my whole team, Shelby, Katie, Haley, we're all here happy and eager and waiting to pleasantly service any questions you have about the title on your new listing, on your home, on a refi you're doing, or just on a hypothetical situation. We want to be a resource for you so that you go in with the mindset of positivity and the confidence of knowing where you stand on the title on any property or transaction you have going on. So please call, text, Facebook message, Instagram message, snap us, whatever. We're here for you. We appreciate you so much. And until next time, it's Ryan Lipsey at Tycor Title, and we appreciate you so much. Have a great weekend, everybody.